guys ready? Start the week? All right. Good morning. I'll call to order this meeting of the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. My name is Cam Gordon. I'm a council member and chair of the committee. I'm joined today by council members Jacob Fry, Lisa Bender, Andrew Johnson, and Elizabeth Glidden, who just stepped out, but I'm sure she's coming right back. We have 9 items on our agenda today. One of them is a public hearing, and I'm going to take the other consent items first, just so if there's staff here for those items, in case there's any questions or discussions, we can take care of those first before we go to the more lengthy staff report and public hearing issue, which will be on animal care and control regulation ordinance. The consent items are as follows. It's listed as the second item on our agenda is approving the City Council appointment of Laura Nightingale from Ward 8 for a 2-year term on our Public Health Advisory Committee. The third item is authorizing a contract with the Minnesota Department of Health for federal home visiting funds. Fourth item is authorizing a contract with Hennepin County for SHIP funding. The fifth item is authorizing a 10-year lease agreement with the Minneapolis Public Schools for use of space in their schools for health emergencies. The sixth item is authorizing a contract with OMEDA for online diabetes education efforts. The seventh item is authorizing the issuance of our request for proposals for the One Minneapolis Fund. This is an annual thing we've been doing lately, and there's no changes from the last RFP. The eighth item is setting a public hearing for February 1st on an ordinance amending Title III, Chapter 47, relating to air pollution and environmental protection. And this would be clarifying the standards of acceptable energy data and stating the schedule for public disclosure of the received data. And the ninth item, our final consent item, is setting a public hearing for that same date, February 1st, 2016, on an ordinance relating to licenses and business regulations having to do with laundries and dry cleaning establishments prohibiting the use of certain solvents. And this includes the use of PERC for cleaning. And so I will move all those consent items forward for approval. If anybody wants to pull anything for discussion or have any questions, go right ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Which items are consent again? It's 2 through 5?
Number 2
through 6?
Through 9.
2 through 9, okay.
So the 6, 7, 8, and 9 are on the second page.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, everybody all right with that? All right. So then on those items, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Okay, the consent agenda has been approved. Thank you very much. And staff's welcome to stay longer if they want to hear more about animal care and control, but this gives you an opportunity to leave then, and we're ready to move on to our next item, which is the animal care and control regulation ordinance. And I'm not sure who's going to set this up for us, but as you get ready, I just sort of want to preview my plan that I walked in here with. There's been some online communications about this with staff and some committee members. The actual ordinance wasn't posted on our agenda online, so it was difficult for people to read it, and it's actually rather extensive. Also, I have an amendment that I'm proposing. There's copies of it over there. This would be to prohibit the use of bullhooks in Minneapolis. I've tried to reach out to one of the circus vendors and haven't heard back from them yet. It was something I wanted to get done before this meeting. And also, I think that there's been a lot of discussion. I don't know about the other committee members, but I got a flourish of emails coming in Saturday and Sunday about some concerns we'll probably hear more about today. So what I'd like to do, my plan is to take the presentation to hold the public hearing and to consider any amendments. But my thought at this point then is to say we're going to hold it over in committee one cycle in case there's any other changes, and also to give me a chance to finish some of my work and the rest of the public a chance to look at things. Another reason why that makes sense to me is because we're actually holding our committee meeting very late in the cycle for us. We're usually the first committee to meet, would have been last Monday, and the council actually meets on Friday this week, so that gives us just a little bit of time. So with all that information out there, everybody can think about what they want to say or get ready to respond to that. But let's find out more about this now. So, Mr. Schuckman, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, Noah Schuckman, Interim Director of Regulatory Services. I will turn this over momentarily to Deputy Director for Minneapolis Animal Care and Control, Caroline Harefield, and Eric Prosser to do our staff presentation. I did want to take a moment at the top to acknowledge that this is the result of more than a year's work, particularly by Ms. Harefield, Ms. Prosser, our former director, Nuria Rivera-Vandermeide, and City Attorney Joel Fussy. And so thanks to all of them for their work, as well as Kelly Jones, who did community engagement work. So with that.
Thank you.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, council members. Well, in late 2014, council members asked Minneapolis Care and Control to take a hard look at our existing code and make significant improvements. The result is a proposed ordinance that clearly defines who animal care and control is, their mission, and the laws that set the standards for animal protection in Minneapolis. How did we do this? We engaged our partners and conducted best practice research. There was a very extensive community engagement effort. I think we totaled over 50, approximately 50 community meetings, are both with individuals, organizations, and community meetings with general citizens, other entities such as the City of St. Paul, the Animal Humane Society, rescue groups, our Citizens for Minneapolis Animal Care and Control, MinPaws, Animal Care and Control Advisory Board, our staff and volunteers, and the general public. We also reviewed shelter practices, including the policies and procedures about euthanasia with the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Veterinary Medical Association. We reviewed other state practices and codes. What did we learn from our outreach and research? We learned that animal care and control does a lot of things really well. But we also heard that our mission needed to be updated to reflect animal welfare practices and community expectations. When this ordinance was written, we were dog catchers, essentially. We could be doing more to help create a pet-friendly city that has the protections necessary to provide all animals with a good life. Our animal shelter should provide services to its community and improve the lives of citizens and animals. And our ordinances should be easy to understand and work with. We also learned the importance of continued commitment to effective protection from dangerous or vicious animals. The freedom to responsibly own animals currently banned by ordinance should be allowed. Compliance with permits, license requirements is necessary, but some of the regulations around securing those permits were difficult and ultimately counterproductive. You're taking over? All right.
Mr. Chair, committee members, I'm Caroline Harefield. I'm the Deputy Director for Minneapolis Animal Care and Control. What's new for MAC and its partners in the proposed ordinance? We defined many different definitions and made it very clear that we were ramping up and increasing the section on definitions. Previous language was vague. Clear definitions will foster a common understanding of our laws. The role and purpose of MAC. We defined and affirmed the roles, responsibilities, and authority of MAC to protect animals and enforce our ordinance. Records and public accountability. We established expectations of which records MAC and its partners will maintain. Standards of care and disposition of impounded animals. For MAC and private shelters, we established those standards of care in our ordinance. Disposition of impounded animals. We created clear, transparent protocol for use of euthanasia, transferring to rescues and rescue partners, and holding periods for stray and surrendered animals. Nuisances and disturbing the peace. We expanded in clear definition of what constitutes a nuisance in Minneapolis, how it applies to all animals, and noise must be plainly audible across property lines or through partitions common to two residents. We narrowed the broad definition that we currently have in where the noise must take place for at least 15 minutes between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. or for 10 minutes between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. With regards to leashing and tethering, tethered animals must be monitored or the owner must be nearby when the animal is tethered. Endangering the public, specific language that prohibits the care, custody, and or housing of any animal in such a manner that endangers the safety of our public. What we changed for licensing and permitting, we created a reptile and amphibian permit. We updated requirements for chickens. We removed the signature requirements, eliminating licensing requirements for rabbits. With our number of pets, currently we can only own 3 pets of any variety of animals. The new ordinance provides for up to 4 animals per dwelling unit, but no more than 3 dogs without a multiple animal permit. We clearly specify what is expected in terms of treatment and well-being of a responsible owner. All animals shall have adequate food, water, shelter, appropriate space and exercise, access to veterinarian care and treatment, and access and care to prevent the pain and suffering. And we clearly define that in our definitions. Animal traps. Nuisance animals such as raccoons and squirrels must be trapped using humane methods to allow them to be released back to the wild. Reptiles and amphibians. Our new permit will allow non-toxic, non-venomous, non-poisonous reptiles and amphibians as pets. Euthanasia. We establish clear procedural requirements for the use of euthanasia. We require a check against the registry of all organizations willing to accept animals prior to euthanasia. In our fowl permit, we eliminate the signature requirement. We also increase education about caring for poultry and fowl. We better define adequate care requirements for poultry and fowl, and roosters are still required a special permit. We replaced the bulk annual renewal as with a 12-month rolling permit. What we didn't touch the feral cats, ordinance, honeybees, commercial vendors, licensing with the exception of eliminating licensing requirements for rabbits. We didn't touch the horses and stables or feces cleanup, state law requirements for dangerous dogs. That completes my summary of our ordinance rewrite and answer any questions you may have.
I think I have a question. It's going to come up, and maybe there'll be other questions too. It's a question about fowl and animals. So some people have raised the issue of why don't we just consider fowl a subcategory of animals? And is there some reason why we have to call the ordinance animals and fowl and separate that like that? Is this to comply with state statute? Is there a rationale behind that? Or is that just the way it's been done traditionally?
Well, fowl in regards to poultry are a form of livestock under state and federal codes. And there is a fundamental difference between that and a companion animal. With chickens, we eat their eggs, people eat their meat. With companion animals, we don't traditionally do that. And that's our recommendations.
And I guess that would have been like a follow-up question. I know actually the way the ordinance had been written, we did treat them as companion animals. So this is a shift. At least it seemed like we treated them more like.
I don't believe we treated them as companion animals previously.
Well, it wasn't articulated you could keep them as livestock either. I'll check that though while we're listening to the public hearing. But so there's really no reason in the title of the ordinance to call it regulating animals and fowl. We could just say regulating animals and it would still have all the same meaning. Because my hunch was that was just the way we had always done it, and other cities maybe had done it. That's why it was there, but people were asking. That's my assumption. Maybe we'll have some more questions after the public hearing, but I don't see any right now. Okay, thank you very much. Then I'm ready to open the public hearing, and I'm not sure if anybody has signed up to speak yet, because if so, we can go through the order in which you signed up. I'll just get the sheet. So So far, it looks like only 3 people have signed up. If you decide you want to speak later, though, there'll be an opportunity and you can get up and speak. But with 3 people, I think we can be pretty relaxed about the timing. It would be nice if you could keep it to about 3 minutes. And if it starts going longer than that, I may let you know. Yeah. The first person signed up is Christine Coughlin. So you can come up. Welcome.
Good morning. So I'm going to be speaking to the amendment that is going to be proposed. But before I do that, I just want to say my name is Christine Coughlin. I'm the Minnesota State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. And I'm grateful to Councilmember Andrew Johnson for bringing forward this revision of our animal code, for soliciting broad public input, and want to look forward to continuing to work with Minneapolis Animal Care and Control on improving euthanasia methods at the shelter this year. So on behalf of our supporters in Minneapolis, I respectfully urge the committee's adoption and approval of Councilmember Gordon's amendment that prohibits the use of bullhooks on elephants. So it can be helpful to be reminded about what we're talking about, so I brought a bullhook with me today. So as you can see, it resembles a fireplace poker, and it has a sharp steel hook and a point at one end. By its very design, it's intended to cause pain and fear. World-renowned authorities, including scientists, conservationists, veterinarians, and elephant keepers, agree that the bullhook is an outdated and inhumane tool. Elephants are hooked and hit with bullhooks when being trained and prior to performances. They're also used to punish the animals when they fail to perform as instructed. Trainers use the hook and the pointed end to strike, jab, prod, pull, and hook sensitive spots on the elephant's body. The handle may be swung like a bat, which causes substantial pain, particularly when the elephant is struck where there is little tissue between skin and bone. For the bullhook to be effective, the trainer must establish it as a source of pain and something to be feared. Without that association, it would be useless. Thereafter, just brandishing a bullhook provides a constant reminder to the elephants of the painful punishment that can be meted out at any time. The industry publicly calls the bullhook a guide to make it sound more benign, but no matter what it's called to an elephant, it represents pain and mistreatment. Existing law, including Minneapolis Code, does not protect elephants from the bullhook. Outright prohibiting bullhooks in Minneapolis is the only way to guarantee that elephants will not be abused with this device in sight or behind the scenes while they are in Minneapolis. The alternative to bullhooks is protected contact, which is an elephant management style used by most zoos that are accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, as well as legitimate sanctuaries that house elephants. It uses food, treats, and praise, establishes physical barriers to separate the keepers from the elephants, and gives the elephants a choice in whether or not they participate in the training session. Protected contact promotes the safety and well-being of the elephant and their caretakers. Bullhooks do not ensure public safety. Elephant trainers cannot protect themselves, let alone the general public, when an elephant decides to rebel against a trainer's physical dominance. Since 1990, at least 17 human deaths and 135 injuries in the United States have been attributed to elephants, primarily in circus-related incidents. The public is increasingly aware of and concerned with the plight of captive elephants. The shifting tide of public opinion was the impetus for Ringling Brothers' decision to discontinue using elephants in its shows and also causing local governments to take action. Nearly 50 jurisdictions across the United States have prohibited the use of bullhooks or restricted the use of elephants in performing shows. I'm proud to live in a city that is constantly trying to improve itself. Ending the painful use of an implement like the bullhook is an important part of making our city a more humane one. So as it comes before you, I urge you to support Councilmember Gordon's amendment prohibiting bullhooks, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Next person is Mary Britton.
Good morning. Can I make a comment? It's really difficult to hear in this room. You probably noticed me. So just an observation, yeah. So us baby boomers are starting to lose it, too many rock and roll.
Yes, and I've noticed that too. We've actually spent a lot of money and had a lot of expertise and technical assistance trying to improve our audio system, and I'm not quite convinced that it's all paid off yet.
I don't want to miss a golden word of wisdom from you guys, so. Thanks, Councilmember Gordon and Johnson and members of the committee for the opportunity to offer comment on the ordinance, the proposed ordinance. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Chicken Run Rescue has been a rescue partner with Minneapolis Animal Care and Control since 2001. We are the only urban chicken rescue organization of its kind in the U.S. To date, we have sheltered and cared for 983 animals who found permanent sanctuary, foster care, or adoptive homes. Our organization is a stakeholder in the outcome of this ordinance, having to date invested $475,000 and 15 years advocating for chickens and other stray or abandoned farmed animals in Minneapolis and the metro area. We have seen firsthand everything that can go wrong for such animals in the city. Some very important protections for animals were put in place in 2012 in the Urban Ag Plan that earned Minneapolis a reputation as a leader, a shining example for the rest of the country. We worked closely with CPED to get those protections in place. This proposed ordinance is a great start. Really, Caroline did a fabulous job. I just want to make it better. This proposed ordinance is a good start, but it needs a little work to make sure that the Minneapolis maintains that leadership role. With tweaking, it will be a great ordinance. It's worth the wait to get it right. Regulatory Services solicited our recommendations on this ordinance last winter, and a great deal of our time was spent on them as it progressed. But the final draft was only made available a few days ago, so we request that a vote be delayed. Yay, thank you, Cam. To provide enough time for the public to read and comment. I'll keep my comments today brief and ask the committee to review the detailed recommendations we emailed to you really, really late last night. I talked to Cam at about 6 and I didn't finish till midnight. The ordinance is intended to provide uniform standards of care for all animals in the city. But the definitions and the sections pertaining to fowl about neighbor consent, housing, roosters, and commercial operations put its goals in jeopardy by excluding the birds from companion animal status. Two matters are representative of our concerns about the ordinance. First is the title, animals and fowl. But fowl are animals. It contradicts its own contents. The ordinance defines animal as every living creature except members of the human race. This exemplifies the problem of confusing and inaccurate language in the ordinance draft. It makes an erroneous distinction and implies that the ordinance treats fowl differently. Chickens exist in the city as companion animals, quite likely even more commonly than as food-producing animals. It contains a mess of definitions that pertain to fowl that are muddled variations of the word domestic and exclude fowl from being considered companion animals. Yet there is no definition of companion animal in the ordinance. There is a compilation of problematic definitions that were distributed to the committee, and it's also at the end of the comments that I submitted by email. Why are the definitions so important? In 2012, we received a neighbor report about a hen being beaten, squeezed, thrown, tortured, attacked by dogs, shackled, deprived of shelter and food by the owner who planned to kill the bird. A state cruelty investigator decided the hen was livestock, not a companion, thus not protected by cruelty statutes. The bird was left there. The hen's condition was later documented by our veterinarian, and x-rays revealed previous fractures of left ribs, multiple areas of spine damage, previous trauma to the left hock, scoliosis in the cervical spine. Customary agricultural practices include acts that would be considered punishable animal cruelty if done to a dog or a cat, like debeaking, shackling, neck breaking, stunning, crowding, disposal of live animals, withholding of necessary veterinary care, and depopulation by suffocation, as evidenced in the recent avian flu outbreak. We've provided photographs of city birds we have rescued with injuries caused by such practices. Our mission is to foster an evolution in critical thought about who is food and who is friend through rescue, rehabilitation, adoption, and education. We urge the committee to delay action and take time to make this ordinance one that will truly protect all Minneapolis animal residents and that we can all be proud of.
Russ Henry is the final speaker signed up.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Committee members, thank you, Mr. Johnson, for bringing this change in policy forward. I'm Russ Henry. I'm here today as a representative from the Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council. The Food Council advises the city on ways to make the food system work better for the eaters of Minneapolis. I'd just like to report that this proposed policy change has gone through extensive engagement and review in the public, and it has been widely supported by chicken owners across the city. Over the last few days alone, have heard about a dozen responses from folks saying everything from this is going to make it easier to own chickens to now I'm finally going to go get a permit. So I just wanted to report that we have had 3 public meetings through the Food Council on the fowl question alone, in which we engaged hundreds of citizens. These were 3 different meetings in different parts of the city. We engaged Hmong neighbors, we engaged neighbors from the chicken listserv, and we engaged Latino neighbors as well. And in all the meetings, we heard back the feedback that has led to the development of this ordinance. So I think in a big way, we're talking about transferring chicken ownership. So right now, chickens are mostly owned by giant confined feedlot operations, where the chickens are kept in little cages and they literally live just an absolutely abhorrent life. When chickens move to the backyard, they get freedom to roam around, they get to eat the bugs, they get petted by the people who own them, and as a livestock animal, they are still treated humanely. And I think a lot of the feedback that we heard from neighbors that own chickens, was very positive. They have great relationships. Their kids engage with the chickens. There's learning about the food system and about how natural systems work. And so this has been opening this policy up has been a way for neighbors to come in and speak about their own ownership of chickens and how it's really improved their relationship to the city, their relationship to their food, and how enjoyable it is for them. So in this way, we're talking about transferring chicken ownership and improving living standards for chickens by having them in the backyard. So I did want to speak briefly about the separation of chickens and fowl, I should say, from companion animals. And one thing that I've heard from the state and from the Minneapolis Health Department is that it is important to think of these separately. I don't know if anybody heard a while back, there was a little controversy in the news about people kissing chickens, getting a little too cuddly with the chickens, giving them a good kiss goodnight, and getting salmonella. And so in this way, we do cuddle up with our dogs. I give my little kittens a kiss on the head goodnight, but you wouldn't want to do that to a chicken. And so it is important in some ways to think about these as separate. Certainly they are animals, but we do need to be concerned and we do need to be concerned with their health, but also these are animals that are traditionally used as a food stock. One thing that I would like to point out, so I grew up on a farm. I was gathering eggs and slaughtering chickens by the time I was 4. And a lot of folks that live in Minneapolis came from rural environments. And for a lot of folks in Minneapolis, this is just a part of their cultural heritage. Being able to raise chickens in the backyard and being able to connect that way makes Minneapolis feel that much more like home for the folks who are raising the chickens. So thank you very much to Animal Care and Control for putting together this fantastic new policy. I really do urge your support for this. And the Food Council has worked really hard to support this. And thank you very much for considering this today.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak before we close the public hearing? Okay, don't see anybody, then I'll close the public hearing. And I think that we might have some discussion. We're having a little discussion up here, and Councilmember Johnson, share your thoughts.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out on the question of having the animals and fowl in the title, that is the current title of the Code of Ordinances relating to animal and fowl. This will actually change that title over to animal care and control. So we will not have in the title a separation between the two. And I know that that has come up, so I just wanted to put that out there. I would also ask staff, I thought it was very concerning, the story of somebody torturing their chicken, and I was going to ask staff, I am assuming that 64.90, which has prohibited acts and specifically has torture and cruelty prohibited, that would also apply to chickens as well. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I'll just also note that once it's seen as fowl or animals, lots of the other definitions about what torture is and who it applies to, and it's animals, and it reads a lot better. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. I did have a question about keeping your fowl indoors, and this is actually from personal experience. So before I was on the council, I was a teacher. And as a teacher, a lot of times you have animals in your classroom for educational purposes and to expose, students to different experiences. But of course, schools close in the summer, and they often close at breaks. So a lot of teachers bring those animals home. We actually happened to have doves in our classroom. They were in a cage. We kept them in a cage. They seemed to be doing fine, and I brought them home, and they lived in my house for a while. In my house, it was mostly on the porch, but it was an enclosed porch. And the way I read this, then somebody who does that would be violating the city law because you can't bring any of these fowl into your home.
Mr. Chair, that is correct. The way it's currently written, that is correct. However, we will enforce it in any way that you would like us to.
So that was an area where I thought maybe there could be some possible tweaking. I also happen to have a neighbor who has chickens. They really like their chickens. They do use them for the eggs, but they've also had some chickens that have been injured. And I know that for a while, they would allow those chickens to come in and hang out inside as their wing was getting, feeling better, and they were healthier, and they were also inside the home. And that, which also raises the question of, if your main thing you do is you want to help injured fowl, do we have an exception, or is there a way that this code is written, or would any time they spent the night in your house be violating the code the way it's written now?
Technically, currently, the way it's written, that part of the ordinance didn't change, so they would be forbidden to be in the home. It's part of our zoning as well, with regards to the setbacks of the coop and that sort of thing. So it would take some tweaking, but I don't think that there's a huge issue there.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Yeah. So if there isn't any discussion, I'm going to move up. Did you want to talk before that? Sure, why don't we move the whole thing so it's before us? You want to go ahead and do that?
So moved.
Okay. All right, so then we can entertain amendments, and you also should have before you my amendment drafted on prohibition of bullhooks, and this would be to add a new section, and I don't know, I could read it for the folks here if I have a copy. So there's a list in 64.90 of prohibited acts, and this would be adding a new section. I believe it would be lettered K. We're going to make sure I have the lettering right. It gets very complicated in these ordinances with the numbers and the letters. Bullhooks prohibited. It shall be a misdemeanor for any person who houses, possesses, or is in direct contact with an elephant to use a bullhook, ankus, baseball bat, axe handle, pitchfork, or similar device designed to inflict pain for the purpose of training or controlling the behavior of an elephant. Use prohibited by this subdivision includes brandishing, exhibiting, or displaying such devices in the presence of an elephant. This provision shall not become effective, until, I think you guys, you're going to have to correct that, or shall become effective on January 1, 2017. We'll have to correct that. It's wrong on the sheet. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not opposed to the amendment. I guess I'll just throw it out there in terms of kind of a technical opinion on it, and then maybe I'll ask staff a question and go from there. But I worry about making exhaustive lists or being too specific when it comes to language in the ordinance around actually calling out individual things. I tend to think more about the outcome. In this case, we don't want animals to suffer. In this case, elephants, we don't want them to suffer. So my question would be directed to staff. Under 64.90 with prohibited acts, would right now the way that this is written with sub-item number 4, cruelty, no person shall willfully instigate or in any way further any act of cruelty to any animal or animals or any act tending to produce cruelty to animals, would bull hooks constitute cruelty today? So would they essentially, with this ordinance change, already be prohibited?
Mr. Chair, Committee Member Johnson, I understand that point. Essentially, it would require for under the cruelty that there be injury. It's, I think, with what they're trying to present, it also deals with the psychological part of the bullhook. So theoretically, yes, that would cover it, but I think technically it probably would be a problem getting that through court.
Okay, all right, thank you. So that's helpful to know in that case. That I appreciate the amendment and I'm happy to support it.
Councilmember Bender, did you have a question on this amendment or comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to thank you and the author for your work and staff for all of the really extensive engagement. I'm very supportive of all of these changes, including the bullhook amendment. I think, it's time to modernize our standards and really make sure that we're keeping up with the best practices in treating animals humanely and making sure that as we continue to normalize urban agriculture and kind of return our food systems to a more traditional kind of living together with animals, it's really important in an urban environment to make sure that both companion animals, performance animals, animals that are being grown for food purposes are all treated humanely. And I think that this is a really great update to make sure that we're hitting all of those points. And again, I'm very supportive.
I don't see any other comments. I just want to note that my intention with having a specific effective date on this was to try to reach outside of the current contract, because there is one circus operator right now that operates annually typically in the city, or has for years. And I haven't had an opportunity to talk with them about the contract, so I was, that's a placeholder right now in terms of January 2017. It's possible it isn't necessary, or it could be extended even further. I want to, it's my understanding after doing some research that it's unlikely we'll find anybody who will want to provide elephants to any circus if they can't use some of these tools. So that's, so I'm trying to be sensitive to that issue. So that could be adjusted. The rest of the ordinance can certainly become effective sooner, and I think that's the intention there. So with that said, the amendment, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That amendment passes. I'd like us to consider, and I'd like to move, and Councilmember Johnson, you can make some comments beforehand, to hold this over, as I said before, one cycle, just so we can answer some of the other questions. I also noticed a couple places where there may be some minor amendments that we could potentially make, mostly having to do with fowl and if they could ever come indoors, but also even in the definition of fowl, we talk about domesticated animals, and then we say it shall exclude domestic So it seems like there's a significant number of residents who have honed in on a little bit of how we're defining this, and I thought we could maybe do some work. So I was thinking we could hold it in committee, but I also want to respect the wishes of the committee. And just because I'm doing that, I don't want anybody to think I'm saying we didn't do extensive community engagement, do a fantastic job, enormous work on this. Council members were briefed on this. So I think that staff and everyone who's been involved has done great work with the ordinance. Part of this actually has to do as much with our committee clerks on vacation. We had a holiday and our meeting came late, and there was just to get our committee work done right. I'd love to have one more session. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with holding an overcycle. Obviously, this is a lot of pages, and I don't think it was posted out on the website with that much advance notice. So just to give the public a chance to read through this and be able to provide any feedback. And, I'll have comments as well at our next meeting on this, so I'll try to be brief. But I just am so impressed with our staff and all the work that has gone into this. Oftentimes we look around at what a lot of other cities are doing. We'll look at Portland or Seattle or Denver, San Francisco, and other places and try to import ideas of what's happening. But in this case, our staff really took on this challenge and considered how we improve animal outcomes across the board in our city, and is setting a new high bar, something that is totally unique in Minneapolis, nationally in terms of this ordinance, this language, and really evolving the level of care and thought put into animal control to a new level. And it's something that I believe other cities are going to look at what we've done here, and they're going to adopt it. The other piece too is not only did you set a high bar in terms of this ordinance, but you set a high bar in terms of the process, the level of engagement, all the different groups, all the different stakeholders, all the community meetings, the attention to detail, the great care put into it. I mean, it is just so impressive, and I think all city staff, all departments are going to look at this work and say, geez, how are we going to match that when doing changes? Because you just did a phenomenal job. So greatly, greatly appreciate it. I know animals are a topic that so many people out in my ward and across the city care about. We love our animals. Thanks for including a picture of Rosie in the presentation. We love our animals, and people care about them, and so this matters. This work matters a lot, and it's going to change, affect countless animal lives in terms of the outcomes. So just phenomenal job, phenomenal work. Thank you.
Thank you. So I assume Rosie is your pet? Okay, just to clarify that. Yeah, and I appreciate that too. Another reason why this ordinance is so challenging to deal with is because there isn't a strike-through comparison that we see in our packets, or probably won't even be online, I'm not sure. So we have to go back to the old ordinance and try to see, oh, what's gone, what's different, and what's taken out. So just as trying to do our job as council members, it's been a little bit challenging. With that, I'm going to move to postpone this one cycle and keep it in committee. See no discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll do that, and we'll be back next time. And I encourage folks to stay engaged and involved, and this might also give a chance for staff to meet with people and answer further questions and reassure them on some aspects as we move forward. And we're going to make sure that this is posted online now, and that we have the amendment included there as well, so people will have a chance to respond to that. All right, excellent. And with that, then, I think our business is concluded, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.